Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Producing Out Loud. I am Chris Gear, and I'm joined today by Diego and John, who are members of our mentorship network here at Pyramind. Today we're going to be talking about things that we really wish we would have known when we were first getting started. And I know we all have these things, so it should be a pretty fun conversation. But before we get started, we really want to get to know our guests. So, John, why don't you go ahead, take a moment to introduce yourself and tell us what you've been up to. Take it away.
Awesome. Thanks very much for having me, Chris. So my name's John Holt from Oxford, England. I'm a producer and I'm currently studying audio recording and production at the University of Hertfordshire, just outside of London. At the moment, I'm on a placement year working for Focusrite Innovation doing technical support, which has been really good fun. And I also run a YouTube channel called The Audio Journey, which focuses on music production tutorials for beginners, sort of from the ground up, because that's something that I felt wasn't being done properly. So that's what I'm in personally. And I've also recently been added, thanks to Chris, to the Pyramind Mentorship Network, which has been really good. It connects you with some really cool people, and I've been thoroughly enjoying it.
Awesome. Diego, take it away.
All right. Well, I'm Diego Perez. I'm a former student from Pyramind. I'm actually an alumni now.
That's awesome.
I graduated last year. Yeah, last year. And I'm an electronic music producer.
Okay.
Beat maker, whatever people like to call it. But yeah, I love electronic music, and I came to Pyramind to study, and it was literally the greatest thing ever. So I love now being able to be a mentor too.
Yeah.
Because at he said, meeting all these cool people that just started and that we can help. That is something that we didn't have at the time.
Yeah.
I wish there was something like, like a mentorship where we can just choose the guy that we like in YouTube, for example. He has great tutorials. I saw them, and I wish I could pay for him at my time. So it is great to be part of that now.
Yeah, I'm sure you could probably book a session with John if you wanted to on the network.
I know.
So.
We'll talk about that.
I'll be waiting.
and where do you hail from originally, for those that don't know?
Well, I'm actually from Uruguay, South America. Mm-hmm. I came all the way here to study. Shout out to my daughter that convinced me.
Yeah.
And yeah, I came here as a music lover because I wasn't a producer yet.
Right.
And I want to call myself a producer now.
Yeah. I think that's fair.
Yeah, and I came all the way down from South America to study here, and was the best thing ever. So
yeah,
I can't complain.
And you've been kind of blowing up since you left school. I mean, before we jump into our topic today, you want to talk about any new things that are dropping or anything you've been up to?
Well, I've been working on my album,
okay.
which is releasing next month, hopefully.
Ooh, it's getting close.
I can't talk a lot about that.
That's fair. That's fair.
That's as much as I can say. I can say that I did create the album in Pyramind while I was a student.
Okay.
So it's actually Pyramid Studios where I created it. And I have a release of a single next week on Wolf Rage, the label.
Okay.
And that's as much as I can say right now. But
fair enough.
But yeah, it's been great. It's been really great.
That's great. I think it speaks volumes when the alumni are part of the family, a year more after school.
Yeah, and it's always great to be back here. Like I really don't want to leave ever Pyramind because it's like a second family. That's the best way of describing it. I
would agree. I think it is a lot fun. Like family.
Yeah,
I think
it's always fun.
It's nice to be around people that really get along on a genuine level.
And especially because you used to like go to a school where they're like everyone is like tied, you're like there's classes and that's all.
Right.
Like here we go to classes, then we have office hours that they're like supposed to be 1 hour, but they end up being like 4 hours.
Yeah.
And everyone is helping everyone, and we all like running around the studios just
absolutely
minding business. It's just great. I just love it.
Yeah.
I love this school.
Yeah, we actually do office hours in the studio right here because this is in my office here.
Oh, nice.
And they end up being about 3 hours now.
Exactly.
On average, where people just come in, sit down on the couch, and kick it for a few, and we go crazy. But this isn't an ad for Pyramind, so let's get into our topic. We all had to start somewhere, I've been very outspoken about this over the years. A lot of you have followed the rants of mine for several years, and one of my biggest pet peeves is when people kind of act like they just fell into this world knowing everything.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
in my opinion, there's no stupid questions. Everybody has to start from somewhere. And even if you've been doing this forever, there are things you wish you could have done differently, things you wish you could know, things you wish you could have more access to or whatever. So today's topic is, what did we wish we knew? Or what did we wish we had access to when we were first getting started? I think this should probably be a pretty
That's a big subject.
good one. It really is. It really
subject.
is. Now, I've got some years on you guys. So I kind of have an unfair advantage, right? Because I started out before the internet and before everything went digital. So one of mine could easily just be, I didn't know what it was going to be when everything went digital. So I wish I would have known exactly what going digital in the industry at large was going to mean to not just the music and the process of making music, but to the people that
And
make
technology.
music.
Think about it.
It's amazing.
It is. It is.
It's amazing.
Time to time, I try to think about that. Like if I was like born like 40 years ago, you know, and I try to like visualize today's kind of ways of producing music.
Yeah.
And it's just, there's so much to do, you know, that I talk to people like, for example, Steve Hightaker from school, like the way he could keep going with the knowledge, you know, it's just amazing. Cause I don't know anything about like tape recorders, you know, and that kind of stuff. Nothing about that.
Yeah. Steve, Matt, Greg, we're all kind of in that same age group. Jeff too. Yeah. I grew up, I think my first tape editing was on a reel-to-reel. I loved 8-tracks. Like we could talk about tape for a long time, I'm sure. So, John, why don't you kick this off with one thing that you really wish you would have known?
Sure. Yeah, with a list of about 3, and I'm sure it could be as long as my arm if we had the time for it. I mean, there's so many things, but I think the first thing that I'd like to go back and tell myself, if I could transport back and say, like, sit down, John, this is what you need to do. One of the first things I would say is don't focus on the gear and the plugins, because investing in education is probably one of the most valuable investments you can make in your music production career. And I think we're so distracted by, is this interface or this microphone going to get me a better recording? Is it going to make my recording sound more professional? Is that what I'm lacking? Is that why my recordings aren't sounding good? If I get this plugin from Waves, then it's going to make my vocals sound like Chris Lord Alge has mixed it. And it's, I think, a common misconception that quite a lot of young producers have. And having only been producing myself for 3 or 4 years, I know that I certainly did fall into that trap. And as soon as it sort of clicked for me, that as soon as I started studying, that's when I started to realize my production get better. And I know that sounds quite obvious, but it really did click that it's not buying an NT2A as opposed to an NT1A that's going to step my vocal recording up. I mean, spending for example £50 or £60 on a lesson for someone to teach you EQ is going to be leaps and bounds better than paying £50 or £60 for a new plugin from Waves. So learning how to use what you've got, because stock plugins are so good nowadays, is something that I would say to all beginner kind of producers, is learn how to use what you've got. EQ and compression mainly, as well as sort of just the standard DAW software, is going to really sort of propel you leaps and bounds into the journey, as opposed to sort of stumbling around on the Waves website. Nothing against Waves, they've got some awesome stuff obviously, but I think as a beginner your focus should be on investing in education, as I say, as opposed to trying to get the latest and greatest gear. I mean, did you guys find that you fell into that at all? Thinking that sort of a plugin or a new piece of equipment would be what would take you to the next level? Or
that's universal, man. And before plugins, it was just straight up gear. I mean, I grew up in a rural area in Oregon, and it was a bit of a journey just to get to the music store that had the good stuff, right? And to me, I think I quickly learned that it was kind of like going to the record shop.
Yeah.
You didn't necessarily know what you were going to get. You knew that you needed something new, right? Not necessarily that you actually needed it. It's just like going and buying music, really. So I was enamored by everything. But it was the guys that were working the counters and providing the lessons, I think, that really kind of lifted the veil on things in numerous different ways. And I think that that was probably my earliest understanding of what you're talking about, which is, you know, we're so easily distracted by shiny objects, but do you know how to use those shiny objects? And do you really need 12 of them, right? Because you can't use all 12 at once. They're all the same shiny object, so to speak. So absolutely. And it's not just a plugin thing. It's just that it's even easier when they're plugins because, hey, you know, a folder on your hard drive is a lot easier to manage than a room full of gear.
That's
and
true.
It's a lot easier to collect them and forget about them, you know? Man, yeah, absolutely.
I remember when I started using FL Studio, which has great stock stuff, you know, really good. But you know, I would go like at the time I was telling you earlier, I started making music because of Avicii, right? And I remember this tutorial about Avicii making a song, and I will like stop every time he opened a plugin, and I will like go and buy the plugin that he was using. I didn't even know what it was. I have no idea what he was using.
Right.
But I still went and buy all the plugins he was using.
Oh man.
Yeah. So you know, I totally agree with you. I think it's just because we all want to try to be that guy. You know?
Yeah.
And what we don't have in mind at the time is that guy knows what he's doing. You know, while we don't know.
Right. Now let's just kind of take a moment here in the moment instead of looking back, and that isn't true. Right? Like we know that now to not be true. There are plenty of artists that are artists. They're not engineers. They don't necessarily know the ins and outs of the mechanical workings or like the intended use of these different things. They use things the way that they use them, and that's simply it. Like they may not have ever received any kind of professional or true education in these tools, but they get out of them what they need. And we're so enamored with them as our musical heroes that I feel we put so much more emphasis on the stuff that they're using.
Well,
rather than what they're doing.
Actually, I want to make a point there. The only good thing I can think about, like, you know, like downloading all the plugins that you don't need, is because, of course, at that time you don't have the knowledge that we have now, right? But still, you learn how to use tools without knowing what you're doing. You know, you make sound, you know, sound louder, fatter, you know, brighter.
Right.
You don't know what you're doing. Right. So later on, that could be a thing, you know, because when you have all the knowledge, then you can go back and be like, I can still use this because it works for me.
That's right.
Know?
Yeah.
And even if it's not technically correct, it still works.
Yeah.
That happens to me with a lot of waves. I won't say which ones, but with a lot of waves which I used to use when I was younger. And I want to say that some of them I still don't know what they actually are.
Sure.
But they work great for me, and it just works.
I think there's a lot of power in acknowledging that you don't necessarily know how something is supposed to work or how it's actually working, as long as you're getting something out of it that you need to get out of it. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, that's rock and roll right there. Not knowing how other people have used stuff that came before you, but knowing what you can do with it. I think that's kind of how we all start to achieve our own sound. And I mean, that right there is a big one. I mean, that might be one of my things that I wish I would have known when I was younger, is to embrace those moments when you aren't truly knowledgeable about the tools that you're using yet, because it leaves you open to possibilities and potential.
To what extent you want to know everything,
right?
You know, like I think we could agree, because we were students recently. I was a student recently. I'm still a student. That's the truth. Yeah, and you're still a student too. We need to leave a gap to be creative on the tools we have, like without actually, you know, being so perfectionist or stopping to make everything sound technical. You know, like. I think that most of like the songs that we like, it doesn't matter which artist or what genre we like of music, they do stuff that we don't understand, you know, because they don't have the knowledge that we have. We didn't, like, for example, right? I love Perez Robinson, for example, right?
Sure.
And I had the chance to see one of his projects a couple of weeks ago, and one of his bass lines have 7 compressors, which is
Right.
Like
right.
Michael would be like, just go and saturate, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Because he was technically getting that sound. But no, the guy went for 7 compressors. So,
Right.
you know, all the knowledge in the world would never tell me get 7 compressors on the same bass.
You have to have an open mind
Exactly.
to creativity.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I would
big.
definitely jump on that as well and say that personally, I'm quite a meticulous person, and I like to, I think sort of insight learning. So I'm almost obsessed in sort of understanding how something's working. So when I was, I don't know, whacking an LFO on something, I'd stop the session. I'd be like, right, what is an LFO? Google it, look at exactly how it works, look at a tutorial. And I think in the beginning that really did hinder my workflow, because I was obsessed with learning everything because I thought that would enhance my creativity. But in fact, it was almost doing the opposite in a sense. I was like, if I know how everything works, the ins and outs of it, then I'll be a better producer. And obviously there is a certain element of that, but I think you've definitely, as we've been saying, you've got to embrace the fact that happy accidents happen, and at the end of the day, your ears are the judge, and if it sounds right, it is right. There's no rule book. So I think that's definitely something to keep in mind as well.
Yeah, that is rule number 1 in music for sure. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. What else do you wish that you had known? What else would you tell past you, if future you could go back and talk to past you?
My biggest one, and I couldn't stop thinking about this actually. When I started making music, I would only like progressive house. Literally, only anything else besides that was bad music. You know, really bad music. You need to understand, I was 14 years old. You know, I didn't know anything about life. You know? And of course, it was. I would go to FL Studio, right, and a line of 4/4 kick and a couple of notes. It was easy. So that was kind of my thing. So.
Right.
So later on, especially when I came to school, I started listening to some other artists outside house music, and I started understanding how they were creating their music, you know, and it clicked for me immediately. And I just really wish I had an open mind back in the days, because I think that would help me when I was younger to be able to be a better producer,
right,
and not just so focused on one style and one thing that is basically copying someone else. You know,
yeah.
So yeah, I wish I was more open-minded. That's like my biggest regret.
That's a good, honest piece of advice there. You know, this is kind of
honesty time.
Yeah, it's kind of in line with one of mine, and that is, I think that everyone, well, maybe not everyone, but most people, I think, kind of struggle with this as young artists, is how to be vulnerable. You know, it's tough to hear criticism of your stuff when you're first getting started, when it's coming from people that, you know, they may not be in your immediate circle of friends or your bandmates, and you're kind of wondering like, well, what do you know? You know, you're not part of this or something, and they may have some very profound information to share with you.
Yeah.
And if you're not open to it, then you really can't grow. And, you know, I think beginning with that early level of vulnerability and openness, I think that only builds over time. And I think that the sooner we get there as humans, to opening up to other people and listening to feedback and taking advice and stuff like that, and not having it like, not getting your hackles up when this happens, I feel the sooner the better. And if people that are out there watching this today that are just now getting started with producing music on any level, or working in this industry at any level, one big piece of advice would just be gather as much feedback and criticism as you can possibly get. Because one of the worst things possible starts to happen once you start to actually make waves in this business, and that is people just say things like, oh yeah, I like it. That's great. I like it. When you ask for feedback. Or just as bad, that doesn't really do it for me. It's like there's no constructive criticism. And I feel like a lot of times we've conditioned people to give us watered down feedback because we haven't been receptive to them in the past. And, you know, showing that we're open to these things, I think, at a really young age is only making us better producers when we're older. So
couldn't agree more. And in all walks of life, I think that's a really important thing to be able to take constructive criticism, because otherwise you can't grow. I mean, just direct negative feedback is obviously not something that you should let get to you, but yeah, constructive criticism's good. And a quote that I think comes to mind from that is, if I already know what I know, if I talk, then I don't get to know what that person knows. And then you can take it in and filter it and use it however you like. But yeah, on your point, Diego, I think that's a massive thing as well. I went into university with guitar music, Arctic Monkeys, Kasabian, that kind of thing being my sort of genre.
There we go.
And in my mind, so naively, it was, that's proper music. Electronic music isn't proper music.
Yeah.
And that was just my preconception of music. But on the flip side now, tech house is what I produce, and I wouldn't have it any other way. But I think definitely trying to keep just listen to as much music as you can, because you can draw influence from so many different genres. And like, I went to a guitar music gig for the first time in a long time a little while ago, and you kind of forget that the reason I got into it was like having my arms around my mates just belting out the lyrics kind of thing, which is a completely different experience to electronic music. And yeah, I'm really glad that I came to university and my mind got opened to that kind of thing. So yeah, I think that's a really good point of, don't be closed off to any genre, and yeah, be open to any sort of feedback, because you can then filter it yourself, decide yeah, actually, to be fair, that kick drum didn't really sit that well with the bass, and I'm glad that you told me that, because I would have put it out otherwise. And yeah,
I think
two very good points.
I think like the reason why I want to make an emphasis of my point is because I love now, for example, I'm not a huge fan of hardstyle and drum and bass, but I love being able to hear a drum and bass song or a hardstyle song and know how they do it.
Right.
You know, and even if I don't create it myself, it's great to know that I know how to make it. And that's the part I appreciate the most, because then, for example, if I want to go make I want to create my own song, right? I can take elements from other stuff that I like without sounding like them, and I know how to do it. And that's the biggest thing I wish I had before.
Sure.
And it was more like, I think this is my own point of view. I think producers are the most egocentric musicians around the world, and that's why we're not part of bands or anything like that. And I think that's exactly why it's so hard for us to take someone like feedback when we're younger, you know, because we just hate everyone, and our music is the best, and what we know is the best way, and it takes time to understand that. I definitely feel it. I think it's part of how big the competition it is outside, you know, and we're so focused on beating the other producer, being better, or having more plays on our songs or more followers, that we forget that we should be fighting against each. I should be better, and my biggest fight is myself.
Right.
Now I have to be better. My quality of music has to be better, and everything will come along if my music is the best, just for me, without competing with. I recently understood that.
Yeah.
I took everything out of. Oh, sorry. Let's go again. I recently understood that I took everything out of my mind, competition, followers, labels, everything, and I just focused on making best music I could. And I went make my album. I locked down here at Pyramind for literally 4 months. Nothing else. I made the best music I had on me. And you know what? It felt great. It felt great because it was the first time in my life that I could honestly say that I expressed myself without competing or trying to sound like that guy, or like taking that thing that will make like a hit song, which I think every producer has that. And again, it's part of, because I think we're the most egocentric musicians in the world.
That's fair. That's my opinion. Yeah, something magic happens when you just let yourself be you.
Yeah.
You're not so focused on what someone else is doing, huh?
And it's hard to get there.
Oh, it's very difficult.
Really hard.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one.
Especially because the pressure is always so big. It doesn't matter what level you are, even when I started, I wanted to show my projects to my friends, but I know they weren't good enough. They were like realize that it was basically a saw wave and a kick going on, and they would be like, it's good, because they're my friends.
Yeah.
But I knew it. So again, I think when you start realizing that your worst enemy is yourself, is when you become a better producer.
Yeah, that's good advice right there.
Thank you.
Yeah. What else would you tell past you, John?
I as I say, a list longer than my arm, but looking at the list on my notebook, I would say something that I would definitely try and stress is that small time investments really add up, because I think one of the biggest barriers that I think people perceive as to getting into music production, especially if they don't have the time to study it full time, if they're not lucky enough, as lucky as we are to be able to have studied it full time, and you've been to Pyramind, I've been to university, like we're really lucky to be in that position, but not everyone is. So if you're trying to make music outside of a full-time job, you're raising kids, whatever you're doing, you've got other stuff going on, life gets in the way, I'd say small time investments really do build up. If you're only spending 2 hours a week that you can grab half an hour here, half an hour there during the evenings, then you can really make some significant progress as long as you're learning in a focused way. You can really use that time to build up a repertoire of skills, and as long as you do have things like Pyramind is a great place to get that kind of tuition, and YouTube tutorials, there's some really good content out there. So I think as long as you set out, if you're organized about it, you set out goals of what you want to learn, and you make small but consistent, I think that's the key, small consistent time investments into just sitting down, half an hour focus time. I'm going to learn Serum, I'm going to learn the basics of it, I'm going to learn how I'm going to get some sounds out of it, reverse engineer some patches, and half an hour you can really learn a lot. And I think applying that to the genre that you want to make or the piece of software that you want to learn, people that originally thought, I work 2 jobs and I've got a partner and I don't have the time to just sit down and spend 3 or 4 hours in the evening making music. You don't have to do that. Really small time investments can add up to some really impressive places, and I think that's a message that I would like to get through, because I don't know about you guys, but I definitely hear quite a lot. I just don't have the time to learn music production. It'll take forever.
Yeah, that's a really good one. That's a fantastic point.
Have you ever thought about there's no actually like starting point when you want to start making music?
Yeah.
There's no like, okay, this is the first step. You can start on sound design, you can start learning your actual DAW, you can start music theory, you can start everywhere.
Right.
So I get that a lot of people like, I don't have the time because you need so much time to learn everything about production. And it's like, I don't know anyone that knows everything about production.
Yeah.
You know? You have to start somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, that one actually kind of ties in with one of mine, which is, if I was to go back and talk to past me, if you're forcing it, something's wrong.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Totally, yeah.
Because I remember periods of my life where I would have like 4, maybe even 6-hour band practices every single day, you know, and just like, well, you know, we're talking well before there were DAWs or plugins or anything like that. There was no internet. And you had to drive across town to get to your buddies to make music. And you had to have it perfect by the time you got on stage again. And if you're working on something new, you have to make sure that that is jiving with what else is already in your set. And it's this brutal grind when you put that much pressure on yourself. And I kind of feel that it's akin to when we're spending, say, more than 5 minutes adjusting one parameter in our DAWs today. I kind of feel that that's kind of a similar situation where you're so quickly losing objectivity and perspective, and that moment in time, that passion that sparked the idea, that like all of that so far in the past, like you've crushed that. You've moved so far beyond what you should be focusing on. You're just getting so far away from that original energy that now we have this huge benefit in being able to be a one-person show. Getting back to your point, you know, of like the modern producer is so egocentric. It's also a great deal of power to wield, and knowing how to wield that power, you know, to John's point, working 30 minutes at a time is absolutely possible right now. And before, it really wasn't. It would take more than half an hour just to drive to the band house, you know, or to fire up the gear and to get your synths warmed up. So your patches would sound the way that they did when you were playing them yesterday. And now I can be on the BART, the local train, you know, coming into the city, and I have half an hour. I can bang out a couple of presets for an upcoming release or something on the train. And that 30 minutes was a profound impact on that project, where in the past that just wasn't possible. So I feel like if I was to go back, that's one more thing I would tell myself is if you're forcing it, something's not right.
I don't know about John, but I definitely can say that my best music, it has come out like me being outside my house, you know, like laying down in the yard with a cigarette, with my computer, not even speakers, not even headphones, nothing, you know, and suddenly an entire song came out and I produced it in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And sometimes I spend like 8 hours in the studio when I don't get anything besides a kick and a bass. And sometimes it's just like that in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So, you know, going to like what John said, if what I wish I knew back in the days was if I put goals that I can reach every day, you know, nothing can stop me. Back in the days, all I wanted was to be at my home making music, and the next summer playing Tomorrowland main stage or Ultra or whatever festival, big festival.
Sure.
You know? Nowadays, I understand that today, Monday, I want to learn how to, you know, I don't know, make dubstep. On Tuesday, I want to learn everything about frequencies, you know, and make myself reach those goals every day.
Right.
Makes me a better producer on the long run.
Right. Yeah.
So that's like my biggest advice to new producers. It's just one step at a time. You will get there.
Incremental updates.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's massive. And I think it's quite hard, especially for younger people, myself included, to have perspective, because half an hour doesn't sound like a lot of time. And even over the course of a month, you're not going to be at the point where you weren't making music and now you're topping the charts. But over the course of a year, half an hour increments, I can't do the maths off the top of my head, but that's a massive amount of time. Like, it compounds. And I think Tony Robbins quote, people overestimate what they can achieve in a year, and drastically underestimate what they can achieve in 10. So if you think of it as laying the foundations and really getting that stuff going, and not aiming for 10,000 SoundCloud plays in 2 weeks, then you put in the groundwork, and the person that's sat under a tree planted a seed a long time ago. So you really do need to build that foundation and be patient with it. And the thing is, it's an enjoyable thing to learn. So each step of the way is going to be good fun. And going on to Chris's point, don't force it. If you're not feeling something, then there's going to be something else that's going to interest you to learn and sort of have that drive to go forward and do. So yeah, I think that would be another point, is perspective and be patient, which is definitely pot kettle black for me at some points. But
isn't it?
But
all
yeah,
for
something
all of
that
us,
exactly, something I wish I would definitely have tried to drill into my former self if I could go back.
There's some wisdom right there. Yeah,
I can definitely say that patience has been something I've been working for the last couple of months.
Yeah,
because I see myself a year ago, and it was totally different. I still wanted to be that kid, you know, 30,000 plays in SoundCloud, you know, playing around the world, you know.
Right.
But now I understand that with little goals, I can get anywhere.
Right.
You know, one step at a time, I'm going to get to the top.
Yeah.
And when I mean the top, I mean as a producer. You know, if I learn one little thing every day, I'm one thing better every day.
Absolutely.
So my music is going to be better every day.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest thing I can tell the new producers is just learn one new thing every day.
Yeah.
Even if I don't know, understand the difference between attack, decay, release, just that, you know, simple stuff that it can get you to be able to learn tomorrow about something else, you know, because you already have the knowledge, the previous knowledge to keep going.
That simple stuff, you know, that stuff is called fundamental for a reason, you know. Learning, you know, what an ADSR envelope is profound. That's not just how we control volume or modulate a parameter. That's quite literally, that's the gate of how we perceive everything around us in the natural world.
Yeah.
I mean, everything runs through an envelope if you stop and think about it. And maybe that's another one that I would tell my past self, is that everything is applicable and relevant. And when you hear things like that in theory or in classrooms, like in science class, like, oh, theory of relativity or whatever, we oftentimes completely misconstrue or just look past the simple, honest nature of a statement like that. Everything is applicable to each other. All these things that we're learning in our music production is applicable to daily life, and everything we're learning in daily life is applicable to music. And that's how it should be. These things should be intrinsically tied together. So when we do lay down in the grass for 20 minutes, we can bang out a great song. Because, you know, to be perfectly honest, it's growing up and becoming an adult human that wrecks everything, right? Because when we're little kids, man, we love laying in the grass and making songs, and we can't make a mistake, right? Because we're just making music, and it's so simple and so fun.
I mean, just think like this: who is there to judge?
Right.
When you're producing alone in laying in the grass.
That's a great point. Yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes I'm doing it on purpose. Like I start usually I warm up like this. I open a new session, right? And I try to make a simple song, but I do everything in the opposite way. So what I do, for example, if I need to compress something, I just put a reverb. You know, I make everything sound better, but because it gets my creativity going, because it's fun, you know. And I'm not just thinking about how to do this and that. So I think we need to feed our little kid that is still inside us, all the time.
I agree.
Because the truth is, we're always around toys.
Absolutely.
Expensive toys, but always around toys.
Oh, no, yeah. Living the dream, for sure.
Exactly.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
The biggest kids in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. So I know we're probably starting to bump up against a clock here. I just want to throw a little curveball in this conversation and ask you guys, instead of one more thing that you would go back and tell past self, knowing that we're all mentors at this stage in our careers, what was it that you got from a mentor? One piece of advice that still is ringing in your ears today, that you know, it had a true impact then, but you're just now, later in adulthood, really starting to understand like the gravity of, or the importance of, that little piece of advice.
You want to go first, sir?
That's a good one. I think for myself, the past 2 years have been the most sort of formative into what I am today and what I'm aiming towards. And one of the key sort of mentors that I've had hasn't been in person. It's been someone that I've been following on social media, a guy called Gary Vaynerchuk. And his teachings are very much based towards entrepreneurs, but can be applied to absolutely anything in life. And a lot of it is patience and optimism, and that kind of thing. And I think one of the biggest ones for me has been act like an anomaly and you're going to stand out like an anomaly. So be the person that does dedicate that time to learning the ins and outs of software, and also disproportionately provide value. That's something that has come into practice for me as a mentor, for sure, in what I've been doing with YouTube and music production. So if you're collaborating with somebody else, over provide value for them, go above and beyond with the session that you're doing, you're going to get more out of it. They're going to appreciate it more from working with you, and naturally they're going to put more into it. I think it's a good thing to live by in life, and he delivered it in quite a niche application, but it's, I think, applicable almost everywhere. If you try and over provide value genuinely without expecting anything in return, that's when things start to happen. I think as a producer, as a mentor, generally as a person, I think that's one of the biggest things that's stuck with me recently is just over provide, over produce, and karma will take care of the rest, I think. Yeah.
For me, it was a teacher that I had here at Pyramind. That he definitely had a totally different style of music that I had, but I wasn't being honest with myself. I wasn't creating the music that I actually wanted to create, only because I still had that image that was really hard to take it out of my brain, you know, because like progressive house is what I started making right at the beginning, and this teacher really made a huge influence on me to be a better producer in the sense of making what I actually feel.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I think that's what changed my entire life, and it has such a huge change that I'm still working on it, you know, because it's really hard, and it's really hard to be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that was my biggest thing, and that was the best tutor to oh god, sorry guys.
That's okay.
It's the best advice I got from you know from that teacher. So I will always be grateful, because it was the person that changed me, like changed my mindset in music.
Yeah.
But again, I think that's the hardest part, the hardest internal fight, being honest with your music and what you like.
That's difficult.
It is really difficult.
It's difficult to give yourself that space and that freedom to be honest with yourself. And I mean, going back to the whole vulnerability thing, you know, it's one thing to be vulnerable with other people, but to be truly vulnerable and honest with yourself is sometimes just a lot harder. I
mean, I think any producer that says it never had a breakdown, like, you know, it's a liar.
They have to be, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can say I'm gonna be honest right now with all of you guys. I had times at the beginning where I would sit on my computer and I would start crying because I thought I was never gonna be able to make a full song, or I was never gonna be able to put into music what I actually wanted.
Right.
Or will I make it?
Yeah.
You know, or will I be able to live out of this? This is a mistake, you know, and what kept me going, it was just, you know, loving what I do.
Yeah.
But I think everyone has breakdowns, and you're actually stronger when you actually admit, like, take the best out of them, you know, to give you strength to start again the day after, you know, and to keep going for the dream. And I think the dream is able to make the music that you like.
Yeah.
And that's basically sums up like what I just said.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the biggest dream, being able to make the music that you want to make and share with everyone.
Yeah.
Instead of just the new banger, you know?
Yeah. That's massive, and that's the vulnerability right there. It
really is.
That's massively open, and no, that's the perfect example of it, really.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Because people don't see that, do they? They'll see your album release coming up, which I can't wait to see. That's going to be awesome. But they don't see the times when you've been sat locked in your bedroom, just despairing, writer's block, and is this actually going to lead to anything? But no, I think that's a really important thing to share. I definitely jump behind that.
This is the thing. Sure. Do I want to wake up in 40 years knowing that I could have done something at that point and I didn't do it?
Yeah.
That's the kind of life I want. To be completely honest, I just love my life in the sense that I do what I love. You know?
That's all that matters.
I could be, maybe if I went to another school, I'm a doctor, I could be rich or anything like that.
Sure.
But would I be doing what I love? Would I wake up every morning knowing that my studio is waiting for me to make the thing that I love most in the world is music?
Oh man, that is a beautiful, beautiful thought right there.
But that's
every morning.
The truth. And that's the truth. It's every morning. It's like,
yeah.
I think it's like, you know, we are really lucky in the sense we get to do what we love.
Yeah.
You know, and putting money and everything apart, we actually get to express our feelings in a way that not everyone can.
That's right.
You know?
Yeah.
And that is why we need the knowledge.
Absolutely.
Music to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And that's why it's really important to understand what we do.
Yeah.
And again, that's what I wish I knew when I started.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing for me.
I think for me,
how about you, Chris? What's been your...
Yeah, I think it's a couple things. Honestly, I think I would have a hard time choosing between these two because I think that they've helped shaped almost everything that I've done for decades now. One is it goes back to a conversation that I was having with someone about the law of averages of all things. And it was in a conversation pertaining to sales. And not that I was wanting to sell people things or they were trying to train me how to sell things. It was more about the fact that we become resistant to things when people are trying to sell things to us. We really just kind of want to be informed, or if we come along something that is great, we're going to gravitate towards that naturally. And we want to seek those things out anyway. And this conversation went in a really interesting direction at that point. And it was basically, to sum it up, it's like, if you have interest, if you think something is worthy of pursuing, I guarantee you there are many people around the world that will find value in that. Even if nobody in your immediate vicinity is gravitating towards that, there is a whole world out there. And, you know, back then, late 80s, probably, maybe 90, something like that, that meant something very, very different to me than what it does now. Because now I quite literally speak with people all over the world every single day. And we do not do business in the local marketplace. We communicate and collaborate and cooperate universally now. And even that will be more true when my son grows up, you know, universal versus global. Maybe we have no idea, but this idea that there are other souls out there that are connected to the same passions or ideas, or they've just been waiting for someone to take the step and put that thing out there. That's a huge driving force for me. And then the other one that I think is just as important is the lesson learned that if you have knowledge and you don't share it, do you have knowledge? Do you have proof that you know that? You know, and when you start teaching, and I'll get through this point and then I'll tell you how I learned this. Do you actually know that you really know something until you can actually teach it to someone or share it with someone, and then see what they end up doing with it, giving it away and releasing ownership of that knowledge, the ownership of it, you know, checking your ego at the door and seeing what someone else can do with that new knowledge.
Yeah.
So I had some really neat opportunities at a very young age. I wasn't incredibly privileged by any means, but I got into studios at a young age. I figured out a bunch of instruments at a young age. I befriended this guy completely randomly. He went to the same church as one of my neighbors. I didn't go to the church. I barely knew the neighbor, but this guy was around one of my neighbors periodically. I would see him. And one day we talked. I was out walking the dog or something, and he mentioned that he was a teacher at a local high school, and he taught the radio and television course, and that it was one of only a couple radio TV classes left in the entire country on the high school level. Wow. And I was like, man, I want to get in that. I want to get in that now. And he's like, well, you're in junior high. You can't really do that. And I was like, well, I'm going to do it. And he was like, I don't think you can, I don't think you understand. Like, he would have to be at the school to be able to do that. And I'm like, done. I'm going to do that. And he was like, I really don't. I think you're missing the whole point here. But what he didn't realize is that I was serious. In my teenage years, I was in studios mixing. I had a couple cable television shows. I helped build a radio station that I DJ'd on, and he helped me do this stuff. And by the time I got through my junior year then at that high school, years later, I was quite literally out of curriculum. Yeah. And I had the credits to graduate and all this stuff. And I was given this opportunity. Hey, you want to come back, have a senior year, we'll give you some college credits for these advanced classes and let you teach the Radio TV 1 class. And I was thinking to myself, oh, I don't know. I mean, I've always thought that teaching would be pretty great. But I don't know. I kind of really want to focus on like getting stuff done and building stuff and like getting out there and being a star, you know, and totally focused on the wrong things. And I decided, yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And it was really neat because the first day of class, instead of getting an introduction from the teacher and like, here, take it away, what he did was he pulled out a box of random plugs and connectors and wires and asked me to turn around. So my back was now to the class, and he had this box sitting on this desk behind my back, and he said, put your hands behind your back, please. And I said, okay. So I put my hands behind my back, and he says, by feeling these things, tell us what they are. And so I had to tell him like, oh, that's a mono RCA plug, or you know, yeah, that's a stereo 1/4-inch plug or whatever, and went through it. And when we got done, he was like, you got those all right. And he said, turn back around to the class. And he said, I just wanted to show you that I know that this guy is just a student here, but he's more than capable of sharing everything that you are here to learn in this first level class. And I think it kind of hit me in that moment that I don't know that I truly would have known for sure that I actually knew that stuff until I could pull off a simple maneuver like that. And I think that as weird as that thing was, I think he knew that too. And it was very empowering. And I think that I've carried this lesson with me through life. These kind of equally in balance. The one that if you're passionate about something, I guarantee you there are other people out there. No matter how far away you feel they may be, they are there.
Oh, yeah.
And the other one is, how do you even know that you really know something unless you're willing to share it? And then that you do share it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think sometimes, so we need to understand that all our knowledge comes from someone that actually had the knowledge before, right?
Yeah,
and even if we have our own input and we can have some, I don't even want to say big details because they're like really small details that we can come out with,
right,
you know?
Right.
If you don't pass them, like the industry won't be better.
Exactly.
We need to do that in order to your kid, if he becomes a producer, is going to have 100 times more knowledge than you.
Oh yeah.
Even if they're still the same tools.
Absolutely.
Even if we didn't go like that far in technology wise.
Yeah.
He will have way more knowledge than you or any of us, only because I pass out what I know, and that guy pass it out again.
That's
with
right.
More information and with more and more, and it's a ball that should never stop.
Yeah.
Because it has never stopped.
That's right.
So it should still going like that.
It's the point of it all. I'm so excited to watch him grow in a way that surpasses me in every way. But I can't wait.
I did want to say this at the beginning of what we were saying. You need to let your son, in the case that he will become a producer, you'll need him to make all the mistakes.
Oh, absolutely,
if
right?
you give him everything in the hand, he will never learn anything. Even
That's
if he's
right.
the best producer in the world,
right?
He needs to know what is to struggle at the beginning.
That's some brilliant
makes you
advice,
a really better producer.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, for example, I know this is super out of subject, but if you think about ghost producers and stuff, like people that, don't know what is the struggle of actually making your music and loving your craft, they will never see the real value on the song,
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing. Making the mistakes sometimes is a really good thing.
That's a brilliant point.
That's an awesome point.
Yeah.
Awesome. I think it's not failing 99 times, it's figuring out 99 ways that didn't work before you get that one way that just hits it and takes off. So that's definitely a really good point.
Fail it. You have to make the mistakes.
And jumping on Chris's point as well, I think in terms of having that knowledge, you can be the most knowledgeable producer, but I think it's definitely a different thing to be a teacher. You can be the most knowledgeable synth expert, but some people just can't convey that. So I think if you're lucky enough to have a mix of both, which obviously you do, Chris, and Diego and I working our way into that, then that's something that's almost criminal not to share. I think
it is.
It's almost a duty to pass it on and help people up, to send the ladder back down and get people up to at least that same level, and like you say, hopefully surpass.
Yeah.
Plus, you never know what you can learn from the guy that you're actually teaching something.
Every single time I teach, I learn.
Exactly.
Every single time. I'm in the classroom every week with students. I'm online with clients, and I swear to you, every single teaching session, mentorship session teaches me. Every single one.
And that goes back to what we were talking about, like, sometimes when you don't have the knowledge of what you're actually using, someone that actually have the knowledge, will take, again, let's say you're a great sound designer, right? And we're using Serum, right?
Right.
And I don't even know what to do in Serum, right? So I just go and click a bunch of stuff and I have a great sound. You're like, how you did that?
Yeah.
And it was totally opposite of your knowledge. It's
right.
like, wow, I never saw a guy doing that. Like, you would know how to achieve the same sound.
Sure.
In like a proper theory way,
right?
But a kid just came, touched a couple things, and boom, great sound.
Right.
You're like, wow, and you just learned something new.
Magic.
Exactly, from a guy that didn't have the knowledge, but have a great couple of years knowing what it was good.
Yeah.
So I think that's really a good thing. Be creative all the time.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah. I think we could probably talk for easily 2 more weeks on this.
Yeah.
I don't know if YouTube allows for uploads that are 2 weeks long.
I think we can go live.
and I don't know that iTunes does either. So we should probably wrap this up soon.
Right.
Do either of you have any closing statements you want to make here? This has been a great conversation, you guys.
It is. It's been really honest too.
It is. This is a very honest thing. Yeah, it's good.
We should ban some things that we said. But no, I the thing I want to say is, first of all, thank you to all the mentors I ever had, and just to every kid every guy, any age person that is starting to produce, just keep making mistakes, because at some point those will become like really strong points on their career, and the knowledge is unlimited. So just, you know, step at a time, you will get there. I like that. We all get there.
I like that.
Awesome. I think a closing point from this end would be maybe something that's a little actionable from this is, I find personally that communities are really helpful at the moment for me. So Facebook groups, electronic music production groups, or a group that I'm in called Lengoland, which is like a British baseline kind of group with 15,000 members. I think the communities that I see building up in there are so encouraging and so strong. It can be, you can post some, I don't know, a question about production, or just a general concern, or really positive point, and it's a really powerful place to be engaged in, because they're absolute gold mines for things to learn, for opportunities, for collaborations, and just getting to know new people. In the modern era, I think Facebook groups are a massive place to be looking to build up that community. That would be my closing point, I think. And again, as Diego said, I wanted to extend thanks to anyone that's ever mentored me, and for you guys for letting me be involved in this. It's been I'm pumped. It's been a really cool conversation. It's made me just want to jump into Ableton and express myself in that. But
all-nighter tonight. John's making a new track tonight.
Thank you for having me today.
Absolutely. It's been an absolute pleasure. I think we'll have to get together as a team and do a follow-up on this one.
Right.
If I had a parting comment, let's see, what would it be? Although music is art, if you are getting started in this business as a young producer and you're wanting to be a one-person show, remember that you are a brand, and that means that this is business. It's not just art. And in the world of business, if you are in business for just yourself, it's basically just a hobby.
It is a hobby.
It's true. And it is art, and it is your passion, and you should have full control over your creative processes and everything. It's also a business. And to John's point about community and the power of it, listen to the people that are willing to talk to you and share their thoughts about your music. Listen to how you've impacted their lives, and how you motivate them, and how you're aligned with their emotions or their struggles in life, and also be open to their suggestions and ideas and stuff. Because without our fans, without our customers, we can't do this, not professionally. And I think that's a big one. Take from that what you will. But that would be my little closing bit. Also, just to beat the mentorship drum one more time, you can book sessions with John. You can book sessions with Diego. You can book sessions with myself.
Or with the three of us.
Pyramind.com/mentorship. Soon they'll be able to do that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's good stuff coming, but I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to wreck this news. So stay tuned for really awesome things coming on that front. Pyramind.com/mentorship to find out more. But also, more importantly, even, are these episodes. Thank you for tuning in. These episodes are a lot of fun for us. We can't do them without you. If you have comments, leave them below if you're on YouTube. Fire us an email. If you have comments, ideas, suggestions for future episodes, hit us up at producingoutloud@pyramind.com. Thanks again for tuning in. Diego, it was great seeing you here. John, thanks for joining us from across the pond. We will see you guys soon. Cheers.
Cheers.
If you're a music producer, subscribe to our channel and stay up to date on the latest Pyramind tutorial videos, track breakdowns, elite sessions, and more. Visit us at pyramind.com.